Good morning, Transportation Care will start in about 1 minute. 1 minute.
Pretty good. How are you, Monica?
This first line is very empty.
Yeah, that's all right. This is easier for me. So good morning and welcome to the April 19th, 2024 SANDAG Transportation Committee meeting. And I would now call the meeting to order. Before we go forward, I would like to ask the interpreter how to access the interpretation and give us all directions for that. Please go ahead.
Yes, good morning. Announcement from the interpreter. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation icon, the world, and select English as your language. If you're joining through the Zoom mobile app from a cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish low in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation. If you are in a meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Aviso por parte del intérprete. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, el globo terráqueo, y seleccione Español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom desde su celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor, seleccione silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de la reunión, favor de pedir auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask the clerk, Francesca Webb, to confirm that we have a quorum by calling the roll call.
Thank you, Chair. For the San Diego County Regional Airport Authority, Rafael Perez.
Here.
For the City of San Diego, Councilmember Campillo.
Here.
For the County of San Diego, Supervisor Montgomery Stepp.
Here.
And Supervisor Anderson.
Here.
For East County, Chair Shu.
Here.
For Metropolitan Transit System, Councilmember Moreno. Present. For North County Coastal, Councilmember Zito.
Present.
For North County Inland, Councilmember Musgrove.
Present.
For North County Transit District, Councilmember Contreras.
Present.
For the Port of San Diego, Chairman Urtasun.
Present.
And for South County, Councilmember Duncan.
Present.
And that confirms we do have a quorum.
Thank you, Francesca. I will go ahead and go ahead with public comment, but first, let me give you the instructions. As a reminder, no comments shall be loud, threatening, profane, or using obstructive language that disrupts the orderly conduct of the meeting will be tolerated. Any such language or other disorderly conduct that disrupts and disturbs and otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the committee meeting is prohibited. Per SANDAG board policy, the amount of time allowed for each verbal public comment is determined based on the number of agenda items, the complexity of the items, and the number of persons anticipated to offer comments. This allows us to hear from as many people as possible and to complete our business while we still have a quorum. Based on those factors for today, the meeting, for today's meeting, each member of the public will be allowed 2 minutes for their public comment. Ms. Francesca, do we have any public comments for general comments this morning?
Thank you, Chair. We do have one public comment. Blair Beekman, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Hi, only Blair Beekman today. Hi. Thank you for allowing 2 minutes of general public comment today and for the meeting today. Thank you for the meeting. I wanted to comment that you guys had your meeting at Board of Directors last week about the toll road issues and how to improve upon best practices and better practices. Good luck with that issue. You know, off the top, you know, as much as there's a history of that toll road area, I don't think we have to be locked into making that a toll road into the future. And with that said, a real good luck in addressing the accounting issues that are involved with that issue and just the overall better bureaucratic and government practices you can do in the future of the toll road issues. I think it's been indicative of several bureaucratic problems that have been happening in San Diego County over the past few years that I don't want to use the word corruption, but you guys have been having a difficult time with accountability issues. And you're trying to make up for that and clean up your act. Good luck in that effort, that we're making a concerted effort around the county to clean up our act, you know, to quote unquote. And with better accountability practices, we can be doing that. And tech accountability really lends itself to that process to learn better skills of openness and sharing and then just playing it straight. And good luck in those efforts to do that and finding ways to do that. The San Francisco Bay Area can be of a lot of help. They've gone through the same sort of difficult growth period in the mid-2015s or so, and they learned important lessons from that, and they've improved themselves a lot. Check them out. Good luck that all of this can work towards a cumulative better future for all of us, towards positive sustainability and peace and open democracy. Thanks.
Thank you. That concludes the public commenters.
Thank you. Before we go on to member comments, I wanted to, he can introduce himself, Frank Cortassen from the Port District Chair. Frank, you want to say a few things since this is your first meeting so we can get to know you a bit?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's great to be here amongst a lot of friends. Sharon, I haven't seen you in a long, long time. Look, nobody can accuse the city of Coronado of not being into recycling. They've recycled this old port commissioner here that served the Port Commission in the 90s. I'm back. I've been back for 2.5 years representing the wonderful city of Coronado. Great to be here today, and I look forward to contributing to the dialogue that we have. Thanks.
Thank you. Welcome, Frank. Let's move on. Thank you. Do we have any comments from any of our members from Caltrans, please, Ms. Thompson?
Good morning, Chair. So I wanted to just let the board know we're going to have a closure this beginning tonight. We have an emergency closure going in due to a culvert failure that occurred earlier this week, westbound 54 at 805. So there's going to be some detours in place, trying to get the word out. We plan to have the closure in place through the weekend. Hopefully we'll be able to open sooner, but yeah, when you have a culvert failure, we have to address that as quickly as possible. Thanks, Chair.
What intersection was 805 and?
Westbound 54 at 805. So the connectors to 805 and the westbound route.
Great, thank you. Any other comments from board members? All right, thank you. Let's move on to the consent calendar. Unless there are any members, we could well, let's go ahead. We're on the consent calendar. Unless there's a member who would like to pull an item or has a clarification question for staff, we move on and take public comments. Do we have any public comments for consent calendar?
Thank you, Chair. We have no public comments on consent.
Thank you. Do we?
My apologies, one hand just went up. Blair Beekman, if you can go ahead when you're ready.
Yeah, hi, Blair Beekman here. Hold on a sec. I cannot be pulling up my, well, I'll just, I'm gonna have to, I'm assuming that the consent calendar had at least the minutes process from last time, and I'll just reiterate the importance of openness and accountability, good practices that can be of help to all of us moving forward. Thank you.
We do have one additional public comment, the original draw. You can go ahead.
This is on the consent, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. In the minutes, I think it would be beneficial, like I was, mentioning yesterday at another meeting, that when you're providing, information on what people are saying, sometimes there's more information, sometimes there's just some names written. And I think for transparency, whoever's taking the minutes should be, recording a little bit more so that people, for transparency can look at the minutes and be able to, just see what has taken place in the meeting, and as opposed to just having names be there, and they don't have to go back and necessarily listen or watch the entire meeting. They should be able to look at the minutes and have a, kind of a clear picture of what was said. And that's not really happening. And I don't know if it's not like, it can't be done, but because some people do it and some don't. But I think for transparency and for the people, that we should be making sure that it's something that they could read and, clearly understand what happened in the meeting, or possibly what people were talking about. And, that's it. Yeah.
Thank you. That concludes the public comments.
Okay, do we have any other comments or questions from the board members on the minutes? It's moved and seconded, moved by Zito and seconded by Supervisor Montgomery Stepp. We'll go ahead and vote on approval of the consent calendar.
That motion passes with 9 yeses and 1 abstention.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 3, and it'll be noted on the record that staff names were incorrectly included on the agenda for item number 3, number 4, or they're switched around. So the staff listed for number 3 should be the ITALK chair, Jonathan Franco, CFO, Andre Donajay, and Marcus Pascal and Shannon Alea, and from Davis, I'm sorry, Shannon from Davis FAR, and Independent Tax Oversight Committee, and it's on the Independent Tax Oversight Committee report on initial findings and recommendations for the FY 2023 Transnet Fiscal and Compliance Audit. Sorry, I got through that so messily. Jonathan, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Hsu, and good morning, committee members again. My name is Jonathan Frankel, and I have the pleasure of chairing the Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee, or ITALK, here at SANDAG. I am sorry to report I have no fun parables or stories for you this morning. I know you'll all be very disappointed, but the draft fiscal year 2023 fiscal and compliance audit is a very important part of what we do at the iTalk. It's an annual exercise that evaluates our member agencies for compliance, generally with five requirements of the Transnet Ordinance established by voters. Firstly, that's the maintenance of effort. Secondly, our balance limitations. Thirdly, congestion relief versus maintenance. Are the collection of RTCIP, that's funds that are collected, fees that are collected from builders and developers for regional arterial projects, and finally, transit operator eligibility. And our auditor will be describing the results of their audit in general, but I did want to flag that this audit went very well. Almost all of our jurisdictions were in compliance, with a couple of exceptions that you're going to hear about. There was one interesting issue that we have been discussing at iTalk, and I wanted to present to this committee, which is the concept of indirect costs. There is currently no guidance in the Transnet Ordinance about how much member agencies can bill in terms of indirect costs. And it's something that we've been discussing, and I think that, we of course are not policymakers, and I think that it is a worthwhile topic of conversation amongst board members. So we had three requests this fiscal year, one from Solana Beach and then one from MTS and NCTD. Solana Beach had about $750 that was not expended in the required period. And both MTS and NCTD requested modifications related to increase in costs and using a 3-year average based on what's going on with CPI and their costs. So at this time, I will turn it over to Shannon Allo at Davis Farr, and she can walk you through some of the results.
Good morning. I am happy to be here to present the results of our procedures for you on the Transnet and Transnet extension activities. I have a short presentation to walk you through the results of our agreed upon procedures. Our procedures included testing compliance for 24 recipient agencies, which includes 18 cities, the County of San Diego, Caltrans, SANDAG, MTS, and NCTD. Our testing covers 8 major compliance areas, with the first being testing of Transnet expenditures. Our testing included selecting a sample of 25% of the total expenditures and a sample of payroll charges if they exceeded 20% of the total expenditures. All recipients were in compliance with the expenditure requirements. The second compliance area is maintenance of effort. All recipients were in compliance with the maintenance of effort requirements, which is that each agency shall maintain the same level of local discretionary funds expended for street and road purposes on average over the last 3 fiscal years. The third area is the 30% rule. We found that all agencies were also in compliance with the 30% rule. The fourth and fifth compliance areas were compliance with the 70% rule of all revenues used were for congestion relief, and 30% of the funds were not more than 30% of funds were used for maintenance. Again, all agencies were in compliance with these 2 areas. Indirect costs, there is no compliance testing for this area. However, we have included a schedule of all agencies that did include indirect costs in their expenditures. There were 11. We noted no exceptions related to the indirect costs. 7, the RTCIP program. All agencies were in compliance with the exaction fees collected, except for those noted: the City of Coronado, Del Mar, El Cajon, La Mesa, and the County of San Diego. So each recipient agency is required to collect at least a minimum exaction fee of $2,688.21 from each newly constructed residential housing unit. And these agencies collected fees based on different amounts than required. And then all agencies expended or committed funds within 7 years of funding, except for the City of Solana Beach. The city has submitted a resolution to their council on November 8th to commit the funds for fiscal year 24-25. And lastly, the transit operator eligibility. Each agency is required to keep their costs in line or less than the increase in CPI, and MTS and NCTD did not meet either of these requirements. With that, I will turn it over to Marcus for the next steps.
Thank you, Shannon. Good morning, Chair Shu and members of the Transportation Committee. I'm Marcus with SANDAG staff, and I will now be going over the next steps. For the ordinance, ITALK is required to have at least 60 days from today's Transportation Committee meeting to accept the results. 60 days from now is June 18th, with the soonest possible ITALK meeting thereafter scheduled for July 10th. After ITALK approval on this date, the results of the audit will be included in the ITALK's Transnet annual report, scheduled to go to the Board of Directors meeting on July 26th. That will conclude item 3, and I will now turn it back over to Chair Shu for questions and comments before proceeding to item 4 for the requested eligibility request.
Thank you. Francesca, do we have any public comments?
Thank you. Yes, we do. Blair Beekman, you can go ahead.
Hi, sorry about that. Blair Beekman, thank you a lot for this item. Thank you that it is from what I'm understanding, it is a citizens-led, community-led oversight committee on tax issues. Thank you for that. Thank you for the oversight process, for the public oversight process of this item and in general. I'm from San Diego, so I speak from a city of San Diego perspective. You know, it's important. We're trying to address the future of pavement issues currently. And the city of San Diego overall has been speaking much around the concepts of what, bond measures can, well, I'm not saying this right. I'm sorry. City of San Diego is interested in the oversight process for the future of decisions like asphalt and such. Well, for whatever bond issues that may be coming up for themselves, as ways to create a better relationship, and understanding of their issues, and have a better accountability, basically. Yeah, an oversight committee is awesome, and it serves an awesome purpose. The city of San Jose, where I'm initially from, they had asphalt issues. This is what I was more focusing on. They had road pavement issues that they got an oversight committee for, a public oversight committee, as they created a bond measure to help with asphalt issues. They also created an oversight committee, and it helped a lot. And I can't stress the importance of what public oversight can help in the future of our processes, and that we make new commitments to those things. It does us a world of good, and it's just sort of better practices going on. And just thank you for those efforts. And
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be the original draw. You can go ahead.
Yeah, this is interesting because I mean, I don't know how you think you're improving congestion or like the local streets, but then I'm wondering, I mean, if Andre had anything to do with this report, because Andre has been acting negligently in his handling of things, especially after firing a whistleblower for coming forward with some information, and then he proceeded to try and hide it. And still has, and you know, he should actually be fired. He shouldn't be able to retire and have the people pay more money to, you know, have him be there and mess more stuff up. I mean, the FBI being there and looking into the contracts in the finance department, and, you know, all these things, and him just going to different, you know, city councils and telling them that everything is fine, when in fact, you know, the mayor even knows that that's not true. So, I mean, when you're having somebody work on, you know, any kind of reporting or whatnot, trying to say that, you know, you guys are in compliance, I just have a very hard time believing any kind of report that he's going to be involved in. And I don't think it's very, you smart to continue to let him do any work when he's engaged in what he has, and, even taking vacations and different things. But I mean, the reason why there's, a lot of issues in SANDAG kind of stems from him and a lot of the upper management. And all of them have been trying to, the only reason it was brought forward is because it got exposed to the media. So when we have people like that working on reports, it doesn't really make the public have very good trust in you guys, knowing, that there's already been things that have happened, and we're still trusting this person to give reports and be honest and transparent with the people. So, I mean, it would behoove him to leave and resign instead of retire, but it would be more beneficial if he was fired by SANDAG.
That concludes the public comments.
Thank you, Ms. Jessica. Do we have any member comments or questions? Let's go, Mr. Westcroft.
Thank you very much for the presentation. And Mr. Franklin, your story is definitely missed in today's meeting. Just a quick question, referring to pages 8 and 9 and the RTCIP with the exaction fees for developers that are taken and brought in. Do you see any conflicts with the recent El Dorado case with the traffic mitigation fees, where there was no direct correlation between the fee assessed and the actual impacts to the immediate area if we're setting a standardized amount?
Mr. Melcher, I cannot claim to be an expert on Nolan Dolan, the test that's utilized to determine when an exaction imposed by a local agency is in fact a taking. The recent Supreme Court case that Mr. Musgrove refers to, I think, really muddies the waters more than clears anything up in terms of our local jurisdictions. I do work in a lot of cities representing home builders, and it is an issue we're watching very closely, but I think it's a little bit too early to tell what those conflicts will be. I think this case is going to go back to the Ninth Circuit, and there's going to be a lot of other, there will be a lot of other steps before it becomes clear to our local agencies.
Okay, and so my assumption is that our legal staff are looking into it and putting together a plan A and a plan B?
Yeah, we're reviewing the case and we'll be discussing it internally.
Fantastic. Look forward to the update. Thank you. Thank
Okay,
you, Mr.
will do.
Frankel.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions from any members? I have a quick question. Mr. Frankel, you talked about the indirect costs. What might be an indirect cost, and are there some, do you have any suggestions about percentage levels, or what would be, I don't know if we could have any guidelines, maybe there would be just recommended guidelines with the use of Transnet funds.
So, Chair Hsu, I do know that there are standardized federal guidelines for the use of indirect costs and associated with federal funds and grants. So I think that for at least in our discussion internally at iTalk, the notion of there needs to be a standardized procedure by which agencies are evaluating the use of indirect costs. You can see in the table that Shannon shared that there's a wide divergence. Some there's no indirect costs at all. Some are close to 20% indirect costs. And my understanding, and Marcus can correct me, is indirect costs are those costs that would be unrelated to the specific project. So for example, if you are a recipient and you have a rent payment, that's a generalized expense unrelated to a particular Transnet expenditure, that would be characterized as an indirect cost. And so, I think the policy question is, do we rely on the federal formula for doing this? Does that make sense? Or is there some sort of other local formula that we want to impose to make sure that the public understands that it's not unlimited in terms of indirect costs, that we do expect our member agencies to use these funds primarily for congestion relief purposes.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'll just make one last comment. I have real confidence in our CFO and staff at SANDAG. So I think I'm happy with the staff and the work that SANDAG has done working with iTalk in producing this report. So thank you very much. We'll go on to item number 4. Andre and Marcus will discuss the FY 2023 Transnet Extension Ordinance Funding Eligibility Request.
Thank you, Chair Hsu. I will now present item 4 for the Transnet eligibility requests, which come as a result of the audit results in item 3. Part of the procedures are to ensure compliance of transit operators and local street and road recipient cities so that they can continue receiving their annual allocation. We have 3 requests today this year from MTS, NCTD, and the City of Solana Beach. Solana Beach's request stems from RTCIP funds not being expended or committed within the 7-year requirement. And as a reminder, RTCIP stands for our Regional Transportation Congestion Improvement Program. Section G4 of the ordinance states that cities must have RTCIP funds committed or expended on regional arterial systems projects within 7 years before requiring an eligibility request by ITOC, and within 10 years before returning the funds to the developer. In accordance with this section of the ordinance, the city is requesting a 4-month extension from June 30, 2023 to November 8, 2023 to commit funds and fulfill the RTCIP fee requirements. Approval of this RTCIP funding request by the Board of Directors would enable compliance with Section G of the ordinance, and the city will not have to transfer the unexpended portion of funds. Should the Board of Directors not allow the city's request, the unexpended or uncommitted portion of the funding program revenues shall be transferred to the Regional Transportation Commission to be expended within 3 years on qualified projects within the same subregion. So that is our first eligibility request. We also have requests from both our transit operators, MTS and NCTD. The transit operators were not in compliance with both the bus and rail operator eligibility requirements due to their increase in operating costs per revenue vehicle hours and miles from fiscal year 2022 to 2023, exceeding the increase in consumer price index from fiscal year 2022 to 2023. For Section 4C5 of the ordinance, if there were unusual circumstances in a given year, the operator may request the approval of the commission to calculate the requirement as an average over the previous 3 years and/or request the approval of the commission to exclude from the calculation certain cost increases that were due to external events entirely beyond the operator's control. So to add some context to these requests, fiscal year 2023 experienced a decrease or negative CPI from fiscal year 2022. A significant factor being an unusually high CPI in fiscal year 2022. This made it difficult to be in accordance with the calculation for the ordinance without electing the 3-year average or excluding costs. Approval of this request by the Board of Directors would enable compliance with Section 4C of the ordinance by allowing MTS and NCTD to calculate the eligibility requirement using the 3-year average calculation and/or exclude applicable cost increases. Should the Board of Directors choose to not approve the request, then MTS and NCTD would remain in non-compliance for FY 2023, and the operators may not receive any additional funding in the following year above the amount received in FY 2023, adjusted for any increase in the CPI for San Diego County. These are the 3 eligibility requests related to the fiscal year 2023 audit. I would like to restate our recommendation action for item 4, which is the Transportation Committee is asked to recommend the Board of Directors, acting as the San Diego County Regional Transportation Commission, approve the requests of Solana Beach, MTS, and NCTD. I would also like to add for your consideration that these requests were presented to the ITOC at their March 13th meeting and recommended approval of these 3 requests. We also have representatives from MTS, NCTD, and the City of Solana Beach should the Transportation Committee have any questions for them. Their formal signed requests can be found on attachments 2 through 4. Thank you, Chair, and that concludes the item.
Thank you, Marcus. Do we have any public comments, Francesca?
Thank you, Chair. Blair Beekman, you can go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Blair Beekman. Sorry for stumbling and bumbling around with my words a bit on the previous item. Yeah, this is a good item that describes what I was trying to talk about previously, that this sort of issue, possibly the future of Solana Beach is going to need bond issues for its road issues. The concepts of, or if not bond issues, then grant funding issues. The concepts of public oversight for such matters, it's really helpful. It does a lot. And as the same with the City of San Diego is going to have a whole bunch of new grant issues to deal with their the future of their flooding issues and environmental issues in the Tijuana River Valley area, as many cities are in the Tijuana River Valley area. The concepts of oversight for all these new grant dollars and funding and bond issues that will be coming up, it helps a lot. It does a lot towards the overall community good purpose and just creating better practices. So thanks a lot for the taxpayer oversight, public oversight on this item. Yeah, it's really important. San Jose, as I said previously, for the future of their road and pavement and maintenance issues, created a bond measure that also included a public oversight process. The people on the public oversight board have really branched out into, being a major part of a local government community now. It's just done miraculous good things in San Jose. And it's been a good example for all of the Bay Area that has followed their example. So good luck in those efforts. And to very much thank the words of DRA previously, who spoke on the importance of whistleblower protections. We really have to work on that issue and be really mindful and grateful for our whistleblowers and give them space and protection to speak on issues. Thank you.
Your next commenter is the original draw. You can go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard again to comment on an item when you're talking about ensuring compliance and you have somebody who's doing the report who's engaged in fraud, waste, and abuse and has put SANDAG in a very precarious situation. And so how can you have somebody who isn't compliant with what should be going on be ensuring that there's compliance with other employees or entities that are under SANDAG or that you're giving money to through Transnet? It really doesn't, provide a lot of trust, because when you have somebody who's engaged in, fraud, waste, and abuse and, deals with, billions of dollars and tries to brush all of that under the rug, and then when somebody comes forward with it, they actually get fired. That's the problem, is that he's still there and he's doing reports and they have to do with compliance and different things like that. And it's just, I don't understand how, if you want people to trust SANDAG, why you would have the CFO, Andre, who is not trustworthy at all, and how we can have somebody who brought forward the information that now he's been trying to hide be fired. And yet he's still there doing reports and dealing with money. It's a lot of money to put in somebody's hands that's been so foolish. And it's a reflection on SANDAG when you do that. And it doesn't look good. It's why people don't trust SANDAG, or any of you guys for that matter, is because things like this happen and it's ignored and it's like, oh, well, we'll just wait for him to leave in July. No, that needs to happen immediately, because how can you have any trust on compliance when the person doing the report is not in compliance?
That concludes the public comments.
Thank you, Francesca. Just for the record, independent auditor did not find any fraud, waste, or abuse in her recent investigation and report to the SANDAG board. I have do we have any comments? Yes, let's start with Contreras. I'm sorry.
That's me. Okay. Yeah, awesome. So I just wanted to let you all know the situation that NCTD was in, which is that the Transnet calculation for the Transportation Consumer Price Index, it doesn't actually include, it's not realistic to the point where we're able to express operating expenses, which primarily include wages, benefits, professional services, and purchase transportation. So for example, FY 2023, the transportation CPI was negative 1.83. There probably really isn't negative CPI happening at all, as we can feel in our own wallets. But at the same time, our contract with MV increased by 3%. So We are requesting to utilize a 3-year average for the calculation of the increase for rail services and to also utilize a 3-year average and exclude the increase in the contract with our bus operator MV. So thank you. Hopefully you accept this so we can keep bringing people to come see the Padres on the coaster. So thank you.
Councilmember Moreno.
Thank you for the presentation. Inflation has taken its toll on transit agencies across the nation, and our region is no exception. So I support both transit agencies' request to use a 3-year average of cost to remain able to receive Transnet funding. I also support the request from the City of Solana Beach, and with that, I move to recommend the Board of Directors approve all the requests. Thank you, and that concludes my comments.
Thank you. We have a motion from Councilman Moreno.
Musgrove, second.
Second by Member Musgrove. Any other discussion? Mr. Duncan, Councilmember Duncan.
Thank you. Good morning. I just had a quick question. I'm going to support the motion. I was wondering, have there, just for my edification, because I'm not aware, have there been times in the past or where cities or agencies have lost their eligibility?
The time I've been here at SANDAG, which is about 7 years, the requests have always been approved at ITALK and go on to be approved at Board of Directors.
Okay, yeah, and that's what I assumed. And if you don't have it real handy right now, that's fine. But if you could let me know if there have been other times where they did not make the request and then subsequently had a effect from that not happening, I'd like to know. Thanks so much for your presentation.
Any other comments? If not, we'll go ahead and take a vote on the motion.
That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Our next item is item number 5, Employment Centers 2.0 in the San Diego region, and the presentations is from Dr. Cindy Burke.
Good morning, Chair Hsu and Transportation Committee. I'm very happy to be here today to talk to you about one of our data-driven efforts. And SANDAG wants to be a data-driven agency. As you all know, we're working on our 2025 regional plan. And to get there and give the best information to our planning team, we have done a lot of surveys, better understanding how things have changed since COVID, how people are getting around, how telework is affecting things, commercial vehicles. If you're like me, you're getting a lot more Amazon deliveries and even Walmart and Target than you used to. And it's not only how we collect data and getting up-to-date information, it's also making sure that we're analyzing that information. And about 1 in 5 trips around the region are people going to or from work. And obviously, most of the trips then aren't people going to work, but we know that there's those peak times in the morning or especially in the afternoons. And that's when we're really, when you see the hot spots around the region and traffic stopping and how it's changed over time. So how can we offer people who are trying to get to and from work during those times that our freeways and other local streets are at their fullest, their tightest? How do we make sure that we're using the information we have to give people choices that are competitive? So that's why I wanted to share some of the data here. And I'm a total data geek and will hopefully overwhelm you with statistics and also educate you about what we have online now. So I think one of these, when I first saw the statistic, I don't know if this would be necessarily something that's intuitive to everybody, but 3 in 4 jobs in our region are located just in 11% geographically of the region. 78% of the jobs are located in what we call these employment centers. And we have 91 employment centers around the region. You can see that we divide those employment centers up into tiers. Tier 1 has businesses that have those denser employments that have 100,000 or more employees in them. Tier 2 is 25,000 to 100,000 employees. Tier 3 is 15,000 up to that 25,000. And then tier 4 is 2,000 to just under 15,000 employees. And when we're looking at the data, and this is, I'm going to run you through what's available on our open data portal. We want to know who's living in the area, what percent of residents live and work in that same employment center, what are the characteristics of residents, what are the characteristics of those who work there, what are the industry types. And that matters because there may be places that people just go to work. But there also may be things that are attractions where people go to work there, but you think about healthcare or hospitals, they're also bringing people in also because of the businesses are actually providing the services where the individuals are also working. We want to know how people are getting there, how far they're traveling, where are they traveling from, and then also how many have the option to telecommute. So for those of you who were here for our last regional plan 2021, that was when we first did Employment Centers 1.0. And I'm really excited about this second version. We were able to include additional data on military bases as well as tribal gaming facilities. When we first did the analysis and we were looking at where people came and went from, we kept it at a high level of just the jurisdiction, the city. And obviously, we know San Diego is our largest jurisdiction, and it wasn't very helpful when you saw that everybody was coming from San Diego to an employment center. So we enhanced the analysis by looking at community planning areas for the city of San Diego to provide a higher level of analysis. We updated the data with data from the EDD to 2019, bless you. We had 2020 data available at the time of this analysis, but we didn't want to use the COVID pandemic period because that would obviously be an outlier. And we are also able to use our Series 15 2022 population housing and job estimates. We also included non-wage and salary for the first time here. Our previous work only looked at those individuals who, get a 1040, who are regular, not Uber drivers or contractors or real estate agents. So we're able to use that data. We have more data on being able to work remotely. And then again, this data is on our open data portal. So I'm going to have the team drive us through. So when you go to our open data portal and you, if you could just scroll down, if you keep going, you can see overall we have a high level here of looking at some of the data that I just shared with you. And we have a map here of where all of the tiers are. And if you, can you just go hover on any of it, it'll show you the information of what that employment center is and provide some high level statistics. And if you keep going down, you can see we have a list of all the employment centers again there for you. Nice use, Kendall, of the, you're my Vanna White over there. And then we have different things here where you can interact. And I won't make Kendall click on all of these, but if you could just go back up a little bit, Kendall, you can see that's where we have the interactive employment centers. You can get in and get data on all 91 of our centers. If you go to the interactive jurisdictions, that's data for your jurisdictions of who's working in your jurisdictions and the characteristics. The interactive tiers provides looking at that tier 1, 2, 3, 4. And the work destinations by residents includes data that we shared with you at the board retreat, where we were looking at where do your residents go to. And then because I'm old and I still like paper and a report that you can print out to see a high level summary, we have an info bits that provides an overview for you also. And then if you just keep scrolling down to kind of the bottom, we have methodology, but all of the data can actually be downloaded. So if you want to share this with your staff to do initial analysis, we want to make sure our data is easily available for everybody. So I won't go into all of this, but know it's there for you to play with if you like data as much as I do. Okay, we can go back to the PowerPoint. So before I go into the employment centers, you saw that 2 of the different types of analysis we have there are by jurisdiction. So this comes from the interactive jurisdiction box. It was that upper right box. And you can see that there's a wide range across your jurisdictions of what percent of your residents actually work and live in your jurisdiction, ranging from 4% in Del Mar up to 48% in the city of San Diego. And this is largely related to how big the city is. Larger jurisdictions, San Diego unincorporated, Chula Vista, Oceanside, Escondido, you're more likely to have a higher percentage of your population both living and working in that area. The colors of the bars correspond to what the top wage and salary job is in your area. So you can see healthcare is the most common in the majority of the jurisdictions. Military is the top for 4 of the jurisdictions, and professional services. Del Mar has the smallest percentage and obviously the smallest population. 4% of the residents of Del Mar work and live there. And many of them come from other areas, including Carlsbad. Some little kind of aberrations here are Imperial Beach has a higher percentage of individuals working and living in Imperial Beach, given that they are the 16th jurisdiction in terms of size, but you can see that they're ranked the 6th there. Coronado also has a higher percentage related to the military. Carlsbad has a lower than we might expect, and La Mesa also has a lower than expected. So getting into the tiers, our tier 1 centers are 3 of the 91, and these are again in clusters of employment that have 100,000 or more, and that includes Sorrento Valley, Kearney Mesa, and downtown. And this is the one, it's usually businesses that have higher number of employees. They represent 19% of the jobs in the region. We want to make clear that we say jobs, even though we sometimes may say employees, because somebody could have more than one job. And 17% of the businesses. The average wage in the San Diego region is about $72,000. So you can see individuals who work in these tier 1 centers are more likely to have a higher mean income. And the top jobs are professional services, which can include business services, financial, insurance, government, healthcare, manufacturing, and food. And I'm going to dig into these tier 1s again, just because they are so large. So our top one is Sorrento Valley. This has almost 170,000 employees, and it's the largest of our tier 1 centers at 15 square miles. So it's bigger than the other two. The individuals in the Sorrento Valley have a higher salary, and almost half are college graduates versus 31% for the region. 38% of the individuals who work in Sorrento Valley are able to telecommute. And while you may think that means that there's fewer individuals going there, there may be on any given day, but we know from our telework survey that individuals who are teleworking are less likely to use transit or to carpool on days they do go to the office, especially if parking is free. And I'm glad Jennifer's here, and Brian, because I have slides at the end about how we're trying to use this data for the regional plan, but we know as we're trying to meet that 19% parking policies are going to matter, and obviously also offering options for people, including trying to encourage those carpooling on the days that they do go to work. A little interesting fact, I was looking at your memberships to try to pull out some stats. This is the top employment centers for residents of Encinitas and Solana Beach. And you can see the top commutes, though, are primarily from the city of San Diego. Individuals in Mira Mesa, University, Carmel Mountain, and Carmel Valley are traveling to the employees who are most likely to be traveling to Sorrento Valley, as well as to Chula Vista. Most of the people, 3 and 4, are driving alone when they go to Sorrento Valley. And you can see that the average commute there is about 14 miles. It takes 34 minutes. We're trying to, when we do Employment Centers 3.0, we want to look at some of the job types to better understand how does that relate to how people are getting there. But you could see those who are taking transit are even coming further, about 18 miles, and then it's taking over an hour. So it's not a competitive, and those individuals might be different than those who are driving. So again, as we get to the end and talk about what we're looking for Sorrento Valley in the 2021 plan, includes the purple line that could hopefully get some individuals there on eventually. Bus and coaster improvements, new rapid and express buses, as well as managed lanes. And also it's the transportation investment areas, or those who, what we used to call mobility hubs. Those overlap with these employment centers a lot. So we also are going to be focusing on active transportation options as well. So turning to our next one, Kearney Mesa. We know there's a lot of government. The county has their offices in Kearney Mesa. And this has almost 126,000 jobs, people who are going there per day. And I forgot to mention this on the last slide, both Sorrento Valley and Kearney Mesa represent 7% of our weekly vehicle miles traveled, just to show you how many people and how many cars and how that's affecting people getting to the region. Here, there's government and healthcare and businesses. We know Kaiser's right there in Kearney Mesa. Fewer individuals in Kearney Mesa are able to telecommute, 29% versus that 38% for Sorrento Valley, but they're even more likely to drive. 81% are driving there, 13% carpooling, 5% are doing transit. Chair Hsu, this is the #1 employment center that La Mesa residents come to, in case you want to throw that out at your next party or gathering this weekend to let people know and impress them with your knowledge of statistics. The top commutes include Chula Vista, individuals coming from El Cajon as well as other neighborhoods in San Diego. And again, the commute's a little bit shorter for individuals going to Kearney Mesa, but the transit's still taking double the amount of time driving in a car would take. And finally, downtown, where we obviously are now, this is much smaller. It's only 2.6 square miles compared to the 15 square miles we had for Sorrento Valley. 105,000 individuals are estimated to be working in downtown, a higher telecommute rate. And 21% may not seem like a lot, but when you compare that 21% to the 5%, 4%, it's a lot higher. So to quote Field of Dreams, when you build it, will they come? We have a lot more transit options here. We have the trolley, we have the coaster, we have rapid buses, so you can see. And we also probably have more expensive parking than some of the other employment centers might. So you can see the effect of those policies on the ways that people are choosing to get to work. This is the downtown employment center, is the #2 employment center for Coronado residents. And you can see as we talk about the regional plan that there will be continuing to try to work on the current transit options as well as manage lanes for the downtown. Okay, turning to tier 2. So tier 2 is again concentrations of employment that are 25,000 to 999,000 employees. There's 15 tier 2 centers, and you can see them listed to the right there. They include Carlsbad Palomar Airport, which is the #1 employment center for Oceanside residents. The La Mesa Employment Center, not to be confused with the actual city of La Mesa, those jurisdictional lines don't always correspond. And the San Marcos Civic Center, which is the #1 employment center, Councilmember Musgrove for San Marcos residents. 26% of jobs are in the region are in this level of employment centers, but 32% of businesses. So again, that speaks to the businesses might be smaller. There's more businesses relative to the percentage of the jobs in the area. They have a lower wage on average here, and you can see that military springs up as in the top types of sectors here. We have Camp Pendleton shaded and numbered over to the right, Naval Base San Diego, as well as our Bayfront area with the airport. We have a number of military installations there. We know that about 29% of jobs are telecommutable in this area. And again, only about 5% of individuals who are going to work in the center use transit, 75% are driving alone. So tier 3 has 14 centers in it. This represents 13% of the region's jobs and 18% of the businesses. You can see we have them from Carlsbad, cities in San Diego, out to East County, all around the region here. Manufacturing is added to our top 5 types of businesses in this area, as well as construction. This includes North Island, is one of our military bases here. We estimate that 27% of jobs here can be telecommuted. And only 3% of employees in this tier 3 are taking transit to get to their place of work here. And finally, tier 4, we don't have them listed because it's 59, a lot of it, but it is in that info bits and on the ODP if you'd like to see it. This represents 21% of the jobs and 33% of the businesses. It's a rather large area of about 120 square miles. You can see retail here. Again, remember I said that some employment centers just might have the workers going there, but then some you may have people going to eat or to shop. And so that's very common in these tier 4 centers here, along with healthcare, government, and education. And what's noteworthy also about this last tier is we have USD in terms of the education, as well as SDSU as a tier 4 center. We have 3 military with Navy Balboa, MCRD, and Naval Base Point Loma, as well as those 5 tribal gaming centers that I mentioned, Barona, Saquon, Viejas, Apala, and Harrah's. And we also have the Del Mar Fairgrounds in tier 4. And we know that about 4% of individuals in these tier 4 centers are using transit to get to the center. So in closing, and I'll leave it if Jennifer or Brian want to add anything to hear. Again, a lot of data on the open data portal. I could have spoken to you for 2 hours about all the data, but really hope that this encourages you to go in and explore yourself and see how we're using the data. But again, tying this information is trying to offer options from people coming from South County, up through Kearney Mesa, Sorrento Valley on the purple line, really increasing those rapid and express buses, providing managed lanes to ease those commutes of individuals who still are in cars, using flexible fleets, active transportation options, and then also other bus and rail improvements. So Jennifer, Brian, anything I missed? Okay, so I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Let's move on to public comments from your report. Francesca, do we have any public commenters?
Thank you, Chair. Blair Beekman, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman. Thanks a lot for this item. For the upcoming projects and planning that you're doing, again, good luck in working on the future of accountability practices, what we can do towards openness and accountability, and involving community participation in that accountability process. It can help a lot to add accountability and good planning ideas needed. How it can be always open to everyday public is important. Good luck on those efforts. I attended a UDC, they have like their quarterly meetings for the county to discuss emergency preparedness ideas. They may be a good resource in how to practice an openness and accountability with their planning measures and how they work. That's maybe needed for the county at this time, and how to address. I need to think of a better word than corruption, but there's just been a lot of sad events that have been going on within local city governments of San Diego County in the past few years now that I'm hoping we're making that open now to clean it up now. So good luck in those efforts. I think UDC can be a resource to count on it as how to practice well, basically. So good luck in using them as a reference point. And again, thank you for making how you can be working on your upcoming projects in the future. This possibly will have some AI use to promote the ideas of human rights and civil rights within AI use is important. And again, we really need our whistleblower protections as a part of a whole package of the importance of an openness and accountability as sustainability, positive sustainability for our community future and our collective future. Thank you.
I think our next speaker will be the original draw. You can go ahead.
I'll say it, Blair, corruption. It's running thick in these cities and in this board, all of it, whatever. Anyway, so just interesting that you didn't use data from COVID times. Because before and I don't know if this was who did the presentation on it, but talking about how COVID didn't work as well to get people out of their cars, which is really disturbing to hear. Especially the way that this is an agenda that's coming down from, the United Nations, Agenda 21, and you guys are implementing all the things. So it's like we have to demonize driving because we got to get people out of their cars. And the fact that, talking about COVID as like a means to get to that end is just, it's not very, it's very careless because people died. And, to be using something to get people out of their cars, like that's all I see what you're using this data for is, to figure out a way to get it so that people don't, have to commute in their vehicles. And it's all about control. And when you demonize stuff like that and you take away actually options, you're not giving people more choices. It's an illusion of choice because you're taking away options and trying to substitute them with other ones. So you can't act like, it's a free, you can do whatever you want. I mean, because at some point, the road usage charge or the vehicle miles travel tax is still coming down from the state. It doesn't mean it has to come from you guys. But then there's also like, we got to get everybody in an electric vehicle. But even if we do, we still have to get them out of their cars and to walk, bike, or take public transit. So it doesn't, we need to be honest with what this is really about. And it's the demonization of driving and getting people to be slaves.
Thank you. Your time has expired. That concludes the public comments.
So comments or questions from committee members? Let's start with Cornelius. Lilian. Councilman Contreras.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to point out something that's in the North County Transit District service area. If you'll notice on the slide that has employment centers in the San Diego region, you'll see a little squiggle. That's the 78. You would assume that the employment centers would be around there, but they're actually not. The band that you see from Carlsbad to Escondido comprises the cities of Carlsbad, Vista, San Marcos, Escondido. And it's Palomar Airport Road, which turns into San Marcos Boulevard. It's really critical for us to be able to work together in order to help residents get to these employment centers. The transit options here are not very good. So that's something that, you know, I just want to call out because there's a lot of improvements that can happen along that corridor. The other thing that I want to call out is that we don't have any tier 1 employment centers. So also that means that our folks are having to travel further. So I want to report out that just the other day, North County Transit District had a public meeting and we went through what our service could look like to connect at the Sorrento Valley Station, can help folks connect to different employment centers in that area as we look at taking over that responsibility from MTS. I'm really proud of the North County Transit District staff and team that has done a lot of work reaching out to different businesses and including working with Councilmember LaCava and Councilmember Lee to ensure that we can take over the service and provide a even better service. But that's just some of the stuff that we're dealing with North County Transit District. And I do welcome all the cities along this tier 2 and 3 job corridor in the North County Transit District service area to work together to figure out how we can make it easier for folks to get to those employment centers.
Councilman Moreno. You did have your hand up.
I did have, but I was going to allow others to go before, but thank you. And thank you for the presentation and for your hard work on this fascinating report. I was playing around with the interactive feature of the report, and I noticed that for the interactive jurisdiction, according to the map for the city of San Diego, that's called Where Do Employees Travel From? You'll find out that apparently none of the employees at businesses in the city of San Diego cross the border from Tijuana as part of their commute. And I was wondering why, did I get something wrong or why is this data inaccurate?
I have our one of our senior economists here who might be able to help with that. We know that there are individuals who are crossing over the border, but this analysis is focused on individuals who live and work in the San Diego region. There is other data that we're going to be trying to work because we know it's a binational region, and we know obviously with housing shortages, there are an increasing number of individuals who are going across the border, but this focus was on individuals who live and work in the region, because obviously we know there are people who could be coming from Riverside also.
Got you. And so how does a lack of data on cross-border commuters affect other data, such as estimates of vehicle miles traveled?
I'll defer to the planners on how that affects our 19% that we need to reach at from a planning perspective. There's a lot of efforts that we're trying to do in the South County region, again, from the purple line and going up. We know from our cross-border studies the cost of border delays of people coming over, and we also know that many of the individuals who are coming from Mexico who are living there stay in the South County. And so again, all those data are things that we're trying to update, and it could be adding to it. Obviously, we know that I want to say from our study of individuals who are coming from Mexico, 52% are coming to shop, but then we also know that about 1 in 3 were coming to work. And so obviously we need to consider all that when we're doing the bigger planning, but this data and the sources we had here were restricted to just in San Diego County. Did you want to add anything, Jennifer or Brian, from a planning perspective?
I will add that we do capture a lot of the cross-border travel through our commute surveys, because we do analyze the workers that work at the different employers in the San Diego region. So if they're crossing through the border, we still count them as an employee in the San Diego area. So we do capture some of them in that form. We are working really hard, though, to capture better travel through the border and how that relates to our VMT.
Thank you for those responses. I mean, if I were just to, this is a source of information for a lot of cities and a lot of entities when they're looking at the San Diego region. And, you know, if I were doing a study on anything that has to do with transportation, and if I were to use this as my base, being that the SANDAG's position, I would be shocked to know that there is just almost a whole other city coming to work here in the city of in the region of San Diego. So my question to you is, do you not see a problem with this, or what possible solutions could we identify moving forward to account for cross-border commuters? Or is this not a problem in the data?
Oh, I don't want to say
information?
it's a problem. You know, we're trying to, when we're doing real world research, we're unfortunately limited to the type of data that's available, like with the EDD data, is data from the state of California. And I asked Naomi Young, who's our senior economist, to come sit up here and speak to that, because I know she worked on our forecast for the jobs and individuals who are coming from outside. And am I right when I say around 500,000 individuals are coming, 500,000 are coming from Tijuana, south of the border? 50,000? I knew it was a 5. So about
And
50,000.
these are Americans, right? These are and I'm just referring to the Americans that are living in Tijuana, that are working in La Mesa, Solana Beach, that are working in, you know, all over the region. I'm not talking about the travelers or the people that are coming here with a visa.
Yeah, so I'll let Naomi talk about it, but I just, to say, do I think it's a problem? Yes, I think it's a limitation, but I don't want us to ever stop analyzing data, waiting for the best data that's all comprehensive. We want to use the best information we can to make the best data-driven decisions we can, and this is definitely a limitation of it. I'll let Naomi share a little bit more about what's going on. She's also working on the Otay Mesa East project.
Yeah, so one of the approaches we take to understanding the movement of people, particularly with respect to economic opportunity and jobs, is we do a survey of all data sources available. And then where we have challenges, for example, with Mexican nationals crossing the border, working in the US on a daily trip basis, we run sensitivity analyses to understand the implications of how that affects our estimates. So we continue to keep looking at this and refining it. I know with our efforts on OME that we're trying to do a better job of also understanding demographics on both sides of the border and how that impacts our forecasts. So it's not a denial of the issues that are there, but we do always have background looks at what are the implications of not being able to have better data to characterize it.
Thank you. And my focus is only on American citizens that live in Mexico, not Mexican nationals coming in to spend money at UTC, right?
Yeah, so
if I could just say one more thing, and I just want to say for this analysis, it may be limited, but our transportation model ABM3 it does consider the cross-border travel. We did a cross-border survey that was updated for that. So just because this doesn't show it, please don't think that our transportation modeling and our transportation planning efforts don't take that into consideration.
This is such an important document, though, and for it to not have such a large portion of our working population not represented is very concerning. But I thank you for the response. I mean, this is, in my opinion, a basic data problem, and I think it's SANDAG's obligation as a metropolitan planning organization to resolve this. I would expect that other border region MPOs along both the northern and southern border are facing similar problems, and perhaps we could work with them on potential solutions. I think until it captures cross-border workers and their commutes, our data is simply inaccurate and or incomplete, and I think will lead to flawed decisions about investments in transportation infrastructure. And that's what is very concerning to me about the data that was presented today. Besides that, it's an amazing tool, and thank you for working hard on it. That completes my comments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other supervisor?
I just had a quick question for you. When we were looking at the tier two, alcohol was on the list. Did that include Gillespie Field? They're next door to each other, so I didn't know if they were separate or together.
Let me look at the info bit right now. I know that we have one employment center that's called, that has Gillespie Field. El Cajon Gillespie Field has, we're estimating around 23,000
But they're
employees,
connected.
and that's in tier 3.
Okay, I just saw Al Cajon on the screen, and so I thought Gillespie would be, but I want to make sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Vice Chair Zio.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the presentation and the information. Just a question of when we're looking at the results that come out of this data and where people are going and coming from, where people are working, do we put any kind of view on where high traffic corridors might be intersecting the transit agency boundaries? Just being someone who lives in Solana Beach and also knows a lot of people who live in Solana Beach and Encinitas and Carlsbad that worked in Rancho Bernardo. Of course, Rancho Bernardo is an MTS serviced area, and Solana Beach, Encinitas, and Carlsbad are NCT service areas. And I'm not going to claim that's a high traffic corridor, but it felt like it to me because of all the people I knew. And are we able to use this and then point out where we might need to have better coordination across our transit agencies at the moment?
We put the data out there. I don't work as directly with MTS and NCTD, but I know that Brian does as well, and happy to continue to work with you and your agencies to make sure that the information is serving everyone around the table to make the best decisions we can.
Just an answer to that, Brian led an effort to do a transfer study between the two services. It's actually very minimal. We get very little transfer between the two systems.
Yeah, that actually doesn't surprise me because once you're at the point of doing a transfer, in a lot of ways, you've kind of reached a threshold where it doesn't make sense to take transit anymore. So that's why when I went to work in Rancho Bernardo, I biked. And it was because it was way faster biking than it was actually taking transit. And maybe that's a sign that there should be a better transit service in certain areas. Thanks.
Yeah, the transfer study was actual riders, so obviously, it didn't capture that. But when we're doing the regional plan, transit leap planning, we're kind of agnostic to the service areas. We're just trying to provide the best trips. And then so there's a route on the 56 that doesn't quite connect Solana Beach or that area, but it does get over to Del Mar, and then you could transfer or something else like that. But like I said, we're agnostic as we start diving into actually looking at some of the routes that we'd like to implement. It does get kind of funky because now it's like, who's going to operate this route? Because if it crosses over so then we'll let MTS and NCTD arm wrestle over those. But we're agnostic in the data as we look at it.
Okay, so we are taking an approach of what are the best routes to have, and then trying to figure out who would operate those routes backwards. That's where we could run into some bumps then. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, if I could just piggyback on that a little bit. I think for our system in general, I think that's a very valid point that we have coaster service. So for us, that transfer connectivity point is largely either going to be in Sorrento Valley or downtown San Diego, probably not somewhere in between the line. I think North County has a fairly robust between the cities effort to try to bring in more employment centers. I think you see that represented, but I think the key issue, and I appreciate Councilor Contreras' comments about east-west. I think that's a big piece for us. So we talk about 76, 78, sort of how we connect maybe from the mid-cities between Oceanside and San Diego, east-west out to the 15 corridor, and maybe what the 15 corridor looks like. So, sort of that conversation of twofold, how do we find a way to add in more robust transportation options in the east-west corridor for us in North County, but also maintaining and improving the current infrastructure that exists on 78 specifically, and maybe even as far north as 76 as we continue to see population growth out there. I would also mirror the comments that I appreciate the work being done between MTS and North County on the Sorrento Valley piece. Just a side note, NCTD has some absolutely beautiful equipment between the coaster and buses. We would love to see those incorporated photo-wise into your presentations because we are a huge part of SANDAG and we want to support the initiative there. So any NCTD photos that we could send your way, we'd love to see those incorporated in presentations.
I promise to bring that next time for you.
Thank you. Yes, Raul. Go ahead.
So the question I had is, I'm thinking of buildings under construction downtown or all the construction workers at the airport is, 1,400 a day. But how do the job centers account for jobs where you may not go to your actual employment center, you may go to a site like construction? Is that factored into this?
Naomi's going to come answer that.
So it is factored, but in different ways. One of the points that Dr. Burke was highlighting is that the Employment Center pulls in data from multiple sources. So we track where people move in terms of where they live and where they work through leads and loads data. And that captures only wage and salary workers. So to the extent, for example, a construction worker is hired onto a company and works full year, so even if they're not on a site, they're being sent somewhere, then they're captured in this data in terms of movement. If they're just contract workers, so they go to one site, released, come back in another season, then their movements aren't captured in this in terms of where people live and where people work. But the actual employment in terms of being housed within a business as the source of the employer, that is counted and that's part of what creates these employment centers. So the question is, it depends on their arrangements, but I would say some of it's there.
Construction company could be headquartered in Santee, but their workforce is going to the airport, for example.
Correct.
Where would that be reflected?
So if their workforce is permanent workforce, so they're getting wages and salaries, unemployment insurance is being paid for them, then it's captured where they live to the headquarters, but not to the construction site. And that would be, the challenge with this data is that, and I know you all know this, is that construction sites and where people are moving is constantly changing. This data is essentially a snapshot of one point in time. And so it's one of the limitations that we do have in thinking about how to connect people to employment opportunities.
Quick follow-up question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Was I recognized?
Yeah,
Thank you. I didn't understand that answer. So is it if there, as was inquired, 10,000 people working at or 2,000 people working at a job site, say for instance, the airport, and they're working for a company that's headquartered in Sereno Valley, is that reflected or not? And you use some letters or something. I don't know. What those are.
I'm gonna try to take a higher level. So there's limitations with all the data that we have. And as a result of this, I want to make sure, go back to our ODP, that we have those limitations clearly outlined. In the example with the construction, it's a snapshot in time. So we wouldn't know that there's people at this site, at this site, at this site, because it's dynamic data. That's always
So the answer
changing.
is no, they're not being captured. Correct?
No for that, but like think about a school district. Is it fair to say, Naomi, though, that we wouldn't say that all the school district employees are just at the school district building? We know what school they're at because they're at that school. So it has a depending, if you think about a bank, we have the bank workers at the different banks because that's more stable. If there's individuals who are going from one place to another, with the example of construction, that would be a limitation with the data. Did that help clarify?
I mean, I definitely heard your words. I guess, for instance, then I'll ask about the banks. So if their payroll, so you must get the data from a bank where their employees are, what branches they're at, is what you're saying? Like, I understand data, not, more than, I understand the concept, but data is what proves the concept, So if you say, I understand what you said, but I'm not really following the process.
Yeah, okay. So so you picked an industry that highlights the complexities of this analysis. Short answer is that the data counts the job being housed within a headquarter or a regular place of employment. So, so your example is if the construction company is based in Sereno Valley, they're working at a site near the airport, all of the jobs have been loaded onto Sereno Valley. And in terms of being able to travel where they live and where they work, our data does not reflect that those people who work for a company in Sereno Valley, their place of work is at the airport for that temporary construction site. Did that answer it?
Yeah, I mean, you know what the data tells you, and you don't know what the data doesn't tell you. And if the data doesn't tell you that they're assigned at a site for the majority of the year, then you wouldn't have that data. I mean, this is pretty straightforward to me. I just wasn't clear. Did you gather that? I'm not, hopefully that helps some clarification. I don't mean to question you. Thank you, guys. That's helpful now. Thank you.
Right. Any other comments or questions? If not, I'm going to put on my planning hat and have a number of things. Cindy, if you can just to start out with, why do we do this? I mean, I've seen these reports from SANDAG planning documents for decades, the employment centers, which is one part of the huge thing we're trying to deal with is transportation. So if you could just review for me, why do we do this?
So there's a lot of data that's in that kind of hidden box where unless you knew SQL or you knew how to do complex modeling, you know, we put all our data from our ABM, our transportation model, up online, but unless you really know how to use that, it's not up there and it's not as intuitive. And so when we started working on the last regional plan and Ray Major was our chief economist, he was the one that came up with this because I don't know that employment centers were as commonly talked about in the general population, or at least at this level. It was a lot of data that went into looking at modeling and scenario planning. So we're really trying to make something that's more accessible and that provides more practical information for your cities, your jurisdictions, as well as for our planners to be able to really get in there and get their hands dirty as we have more technology that's available when we were looking at the regional plan and having maps online. So it's really trying to understand more about who's going what, where, how, and there's going to be no data that's perfect unless we had billions and billions of dollars to go collect it ourselves and trying to do that. Because again, with the construction example, it would always be dynamic and changing. So we're trying to do the best that we can, again, to make data-driven decisions and to share that across the region.
Great. And in the past, we use employment centers to help us with some Series 15, Series 14 in the past in terms of land use policies, correct? So that obviously if someone lived closer to one of these centers or we had some other tools, they would have to travel less. Is that the bigger concept?
Yeah, so we're trying to look at where people are coming from. Again, what are the different types of modes, giving people competitive options, not forcing anyone to do anything, but again, giving them the options to get to different places. And Jennifer, I don't know if you want to talk about where we are with mobility hubs, and I know they have the new name, but a lot of these do overlap. And again, it's for those individuals. You know, we're trying to bring in different data to understand what the different needs of people are. A family in East County might have, a family of four might have different needs than a family of four in North Park about where they're getting to, what's the proximity of businesses and different things like that, like our community characteristics analysis that some of you may have seen of trying to understand the different types of people around the region and what their needs are. But Jennifer, do you want to maybe speak to a little bit more about density and housing and jobs?
Absolutely. So, you know, we don't call them mobility hubs anymore. You guys will get this pretty quickly. We call them transportation investment areas. And what the data allows us to do is to really start to refine our short trip making, especially within these transit investment areas. So in the past, you know, SANDAG has really focused on the long trips, the employment trips. And now we know that the employment trips only make up a certain percentage of the trip making that occurs in this region. So what this data is allowing us to do and focusing on where people live and work is to work with our jurisdictions to try to, you know, identify where there's the capacity to increase density in areas where there are those transportation investments so that we can help either, you know, provide a mobility choice to serve that trip or, you know, maybe people don't need to access mobility. Maybe they can work or move on some sort of micro-mobility within their investment area. So, we use the data for a lot of different things. And what Cindy was saying earlier is that the employment trip, even though it makes up a fraction of our trip, it's still the largest fraction. So every time we get those employment centers, and when you think about tier 1, that's a huge number of trips that come into this region and go to those sites every day. So that's where we really want to focus on how can we provide the best mobility choices we can. And we understand that, that there's going to be a lot of trips we can't serve with transit or with a different type of mobility system. But those employment trips, a good chunk of those professional service employment trips are the kind of trips that we want to really focus our transit investments on. So I don't know if I answered your question or helped Cindy with hers, but certainly, the data is so important to what we do here at SANDAG.
But the implications of the data with regards to how it should affect land use, that's a more of a bigger, wider planning issue. Because if we continue to allow a certain amount of land use, incentivize land use in terms of residential areas and rural areas, then obviously the more people will need to commute. So I think that's the point that I wanted to make. And this is also another not hypothetical, but a planning question. As we develop these tiers, tier 1, 2, 3, in terms of high employment centers, might we look at transportation demand management strategies that we employ them there first, whether it be parking or some other systems? And I hope that's what we could allude to, is now that we know that these are places that have the high tier in terms of work sites, we know what kind of jobs are there. We should go to those employers and say, this is what we need you to do, transportation demand management strategies. We'll kind of come up with either incentives or other systems to make that happen. So I hope we keep that in mind. There's another planning question as well as come out in terms of our planning. I really wanted to follow up on Councilman Moreno's point. Is there anything that precludes SANDAG from including things outside of our county with regards to transportation, particularly as it has a huge impact in our county or our region with regards to transportation as well as in our economy?
I'll see if Naomi wants to add anything to this. I think the biggest limitation is when the data doesn't exist or you're not comparing apples to apples across the border. And if we wanted to go out and invest in that data collection, we would just need to prioritize that with SANDAG funds or seek outside funds. So, we do the best we can with the information that's available, and then we collect it when we can, and it's prioritizing what information we go out and we collect.
I don't have anything to add to that.
Correct. So I'll just make this comment. I've made this comment before to other staff members, and maybe this staff can take this for a comment from one of your board members. We draw these maps and we draw a hard line within the county. Hard line meaning it's like the rest of the county doesn't exist, or something outside of the county doesn't exist, but we know they affect us. But we draw this hard line. So when I look at the topography map in your planning center upstairs, there's no lights in Tijuana. All the lights on that map, that topography map, are in the county. There's none in Riverside. There's none in Orange County, even though they affect us greatly. So my input to SANDAG staff as regional planning agencies is to not draw that hard line. So in your map itself, you put a color of some sort outside of, it's okay to put in the fetch fact. And if you don't have good hard data, that's okay. We at least recognize that people are traveling from outside of the county into our county, and they rely on our transportation systems. I think that's something that would help us a lot. It'll help us greatly. We know the huge amount of pollution exists along the border precisely because we've drawn that hard line, and we're not doing anything to reduce that line in terms of its effect on the communities. So I think that's something that we could work on so that we recognize that. And then that will help us understand why we're looking at the trolley crossing the border. And that may help us a lot. I think it's really a great thing that we are gathering this data and working with a lot more information. I really like the idea that this is available online now, so we have technology. So I could see, I could figure out why I'm going to Coronado Mesa more. Probably just because of the restaurants or in markets there, not that La Mesa has very good restaurants. But in any case, this is really helpful for us as a planning tool. So I really appreciate Dr. Burke and your team for putting together this amount of data. But I hope SANDAG staff takes this to light, that we do not need to draw hard lines within our county, and that we can use this data. And I hope all of us board members take this back to our respective organizations or at the county level in each city and use it in our planning process as well, so that we can reduce the amount of distances people have to travel. They can travel in easier methods, as well as reduce the cost and reduce the health impacts from them. So thank you very much, Dr. Burke.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, Supervisor.
Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you for this data and your continued effort to keep us updated on this data set and the travel patterns of our region. I want to know, I've listened to the conversation. I think there's an opportunity to go back and provide additional data if we use a methodology that sort of includes what I am seeing as a more modern San Diego. There are a lot of changes going on in San Diego, and I think that the way that we incorporate those different data sets and the methodology that we use should begin to incorporate what this San Diego now looks like. And so what I'm hearing is there's a lot of movement going on that is not necessarily accounted for in this data. So based on what we've heard, do you have, going back to the table, what are the next steps to go back to the table to try to begin to include this data, even if they're incomplete sets that we begin with, but just that sort of one is an acknowledgement of change, which I think our data it needs to reflect that, just generally speaking. But two, there's there's the technical side of that. So I'm just wondering, what are the plans and ideas of next steps to include that information?
Thank you. Yes. So this is Employment Centers 2.0. We plan on doing Employment Centers 3.0 when we are getting ready to do the 2029 plan. So that include updated information, seeing what the best sources of information are. I mentioned, it's interesting when you look at Sorrento Valley that the people who are taking transit have longer commutes. 4 miles is a pretty significant difference overall. So where are those individuals coming from versus the cars? Are they coming from, more impacted communities, lower socioeconomic? And it's great having economists on our team here because they're thinking about economic development and where do we offer opportunities across the region. So I'd love to talk with you all about, where can we get more data? Where can we add to it? And where can we, again, the good thing about doing this planning process every 4 years is it's like how we're doing Series 15, and that's coming to the board April 26th, looking at the sub-regional allocations and knowing that our population is going to go down and up, and the aging of the population, knowing that people are going to be working longer. So we want to keep updating it because we are a dynamic region. And a lot of times when we're doing this forecasting out till 2050, we're assuming that policies are staying the same. But then 4 years from now, we may know more information about, housing policies and different things like that. So we can update it with the best information we have. How is migration policies going to change, or different types of resources? So that's why we want to continually improve it each time.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick follow-up point I noticed when looking at the difference between version 2.0 and version 1.0 is when you look at the source of the data, it talks about the EDD data being updated from 2016 to 2019. But the concern that I have when I see that is 2019 data, it was prior to the largest shock to our job system in modern history. And, it has, and then I know there's other estimates, but that to me is a serious concern potentially with the validity or the impact of that data, because I certainly don't believe that the job situation in San Diego in 2024 is that similar to as it was in 2019?
So our planning with the data takes a long time to do this analysis and do all the quality control on it. So when we do things called peer review processes to make sure that we have experts in the room when we're defining the data sources and what we're going to use. And at the time, and Naomi's going to correct me if I'm wrong here at all, but we didn't have more updated data. And as our economist, we didn't want to go with 2020. So again, we'll be updating this with more up-to-date information. But we also do have that Series 15 that takes into consideration 2022 baseline estimates. So I'll see what Naomi can add to me as more of an expert.
Yeah, it's a really good point. So the EDD data is what we use to help cite where employment opportunities exist. From some of the early analysis that we've done, we've not seen as much of a dramatic change in the number of businesses between 2019 and now. Where we've seen the bigger shifts is in the actual levels of employment. So to that extent, our 2022 employment estimates, which are in the Employment Center, does reflect a post-COVID reality. So it's a blended mix of what you're saying, and we do need to look at now as we starting to see some of the business supports coming off, whether or not we're actually seeing a change in the existence of businesses, which would be what isn't captured in the 2019 EDD data. So there's two dynamics in this, but what we did see, bottom line, is business location a little bit more stable than levels of employment at those businesses. So we take into account the changes in the level of employment, and we've assumed that the business location and existence was a little bit more stable in a post-COVID environment.
One last follow-up. I won't ask any more questions today. When it lists on here other changes, including the data on ability to work remotely, can you just briefly tell me what that is, or like what's the source? Because for instance, to me, if you say, okay, in 2017 or 2019, I should say. So in 2019, there's a business in Sereno Valley that has, now it has 10,000 employees instead of the 15,000 it had in 2016. But how do we know how many of those actually travel to that site? Because isn't that site the location for the basis of the data?
Okay, I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version that's not from The Economist. So we did a 2022 telework survey that was post-COVID, and it was our second survey that we did to understand how it was being used. And so Naomi worked with other of our data scientists to be able to apply that data to the other data. So it reflects post-COVID. And if you want to geek out and talk methodology, we'd be happy to do it with you.
Yes, Councilmember Moreno.
Thank you. I would like to talk about methodology, obviously not here, but specifically, I'd like to see how the ABM model that we're using here at SANDAG, how is it accounting for cross-border commutes, and how does it not account for cross-border commutes? I walked into this meeting concerned about the data, and especially regarding the regional plan, and I'm walking out even more concerned. So yes, if I may have a follow-up, thank you.
We will definitely follow up. And again, I'm repeating myself, but please know that this is only one piece of data, and our ABM does take that into consideration, but we'll follow up with your staff and share the information with the whole TC. We want you to feel comfortable with the data we're using.
Councilman Duncan.
Violating my promise from 60 seconds ago. First of all, I don't want you to think that anybody in here is saying, you're like intentionally or accidentally or any way doing a bad job. I mean, you're doing the job with the data you have. I do, though, appreciate the most candor of the weaknesses of what we're seeing. When you give that to us, or when we ask you those questions, it's very helpful if you clearly tell us what is the weakness. I mean, saying you take it into account, or model takes into account, or model takes into account, I mean, that's like a sort of global conclusion. When you look at the data on ability to work remotely, and you're like, we have a survey. I mean, there's no way that that survey captures every remote job. I mean, there's people that don't answer the survey. There's, companies that don't disclose what they're, it's only as good as the data you have. We get it, but those comments don't fully alleviate my concerns are. I think maybe Councilmember Moreno's concerns about the border. I mean, I agree with her. You know, there's 100,000 cars are driving through Coronado. They're going somewhere. So I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that I'm not trying to, saying you're not doing the good job with the best data you have, but I think us knowing where the holes in the data are is very important.
No, I appreciate that. And I 100% agree with you. We always want to make sure people know, generalizability, reliability, validity. With the telework survey, just so you know, we did do data were weighted, and it was surveys of both businesses and individuals who worked. And we, again, worked with trying to do the best we can there. But I'm wondering, and I can follow up with your chair, if you'd like to maybe have a presentation at the TC. I know the agendas are full coming up, but maybe hearing a little bit more about how we do make our transportation model and the different information that's going into it. So that would be of interest to this committee. We'd be happy to come share information about that to let you know what other data other than just here is used for our planning purposes.
Sure, I think that would be great. Any other comments, though? If not, I wanted to make some other quick comments. Data, there's other ways to gather data than the formal ones that you have. So I know we could do on-site randomly surveying people, and to get some kind of index. Maybe it's not as statistically valid as some of the other data, but it's good data that we could actually use. So at the border and so forth. My other comment is, I know Councilman Moreno mentioned she's interested about the U.S. citizens crossing the border. I think we should be also interested on visitors, whether they're, you noted that many of them come over to shop. We need to count that because that's a major contribution to our economy in San Diego. We certainly count the visitors that fly in, whether they're flying in from other parts of the country or other parts of the world in our tourist industry, and deal with that in our transportation planning. So I think we should count everyone that needs to cross the border back and forth. And it's a source of housing, so we should count that as well. If there aren't any other comments, we're meeting actually, interesting enough, ending a bit early this morning. So I want to spend some time putting in a plug for our next two meetings. So the Transportation Committee has moved to trying to have one meeting per month as opposed to two. So consequently, the next two meetings are going to be packed with a lot of stuff. So the next meeting is May 17th at 9 a.m. That's a lot of business on that one. The other one I want to plug in is for June 21st. We're going to have a joint meeting with a few other committees. And at that meeting, we'll have a panel addressing health impacts from transportation. It's something that the board moved on last year, and we're coming around to addressing how we can try to reduce health impacts from the transportation sector in our community. So I'm looking forward to that one, and hopefully having some good discussion there with regards to how do we weave in health impacts. We saw maps of employment centers. We've seen maps of where people live, and we have all kinds of maps showing transportation corridors. I want to fold in the planning process the maps of where people are suffering the most from the bad effects that our transportation system is causing in our communities, and how we can see if we could reduce those impacts. So that's the meeting on the 21st. If there aren't any other last comments, I'm going to call this meeting to be adjourned. Thank you very much.